Wakanda Forever is proof that Phase 4 is complete garbage. And if this is what we have to look forward to, then we're in for a shitty ride. Obviously, I didn't like Wakanda Forever. The major flaw of the movie is Disney, Ryan Coogler, or the people behind it, conflating the real world Chadwick Boseman and his death to a fictional MCU and Black Panther's death. The problem with this is there is no narrative reason. The guy died in real life. We're all mourning his death. But in the MCU, T'Challa didn't die. And forcing the issue creates, this abomination because there is no narrative reason that led to T'Challa's death. What we're given in the story is not a reason, because if it's a reason, it'll trickle out throughout the movie. It'll greatly affect the plot. We're told he dies of some unknown disease, and that's that. And then everybody mourns him. But if it was done properly, that unknown disease would be the major plot of the story. That would be the major aspect of the story. But that would be very interesting. So, narratively speaking, if T'Challa died in the MCU, it would be, narratively and dramatically speaking, would be because somebody killed him. And then Shuri or somebody would be looking for vengeance, and that's why they would don the Black Panther costume. Oddly, this is kind of what we got in the third act of a 2.5 hour movie. So what I just described to you, we got that, but in the third act. So you might be asking, what happens? Obviously, spoilers. What happens throughout the movie before this third act, where the movie fulfills its promise? Well, Shuri isn't the main character. The main character is the Queen Mother for the first two parts of the movie, for the first two thirds of the movie. She is the main character. We're following her. Fair enough, it's mildly entertaining, but nowhere as interesting as following Black Panther, or a Black Panther, or the Black Panther, if they had recast, which they should have. So throughout the movie, we're following a character that really has nothing to do with why we're here. She's a supporting member, so she only has a supporting role to do with what we've come to pay money for. She's a side character, even though she's the queen, but she's the main character for a good portion of the movie. And they needed to do this because, heavy spoilers here, she is killed by Namor by the end of the second act. Why did they do this? So we got T'Challa dead, right? And the Queen Mother dead. So they do this to give Shuri motivation. So from the beginning, before then, she's just been meandering, mourning, whatever. We don't really care as an audience member what she's doing because she's not giving any motivation. So in your mind, that character doesn't really register, right? So the main character is the Queen Mother until she's killed to give Shuri motivation. So go back to my previous explanation of what the movie should have been if they actually followed through with the narrative death of T'Challa within the MCU. If he was killed, Shuri would be looking for vengeance. But what we got is Shuri looking for vengeance in the third act. And they had to do that because they had to build the impact of the reason she's looking for vengeance in the first two acts, which is the Queen Mother. Making her the protagonist builds emotional. We were empathizing with her. She's our point of view character, and then when she's taken away, that's supposed to be a big impact, and we're supposed to be on board with Shuri's motivation to finally don the Black Panther suit and become Black Panther and save the day. So Marvel, the MCU, forced the issue of making T'Challa dead in world, in universe. But then they also went with the decision, because they forced this issue, right? Because they made this decision, and because it wasn't narratively driven, nothing comes out of it, right? Shuri doesn't have a motivation right off the bat, right off the bat, to become Black Panther, which would be the driving force of the movie. Because they forced the issue, because they followed through with the fact that Chadwick Boseman died in real life, that means T'Challa is dead in the MCU. We're going to follow through. But the narrative reason for his death in the MCU doesn't yield any fruit, which is why they had to make the Queen Mother the main character up until she's not, up until she's killed. She's a plot point. She's killed to give our new main character motivation. So clearly it's misguided right from the beginning. This is why the whole movie is garbage, stemming from the fact that they did not recast T'Challa. Watching the movie is a weird experience because it looks like Black Panther, feels like Black Panther, but there's no Black Panther, right? Everybody keeps talking about the loss of Black Panther, but in your mind, as Red Letter would say it, you might not have noticed it, but your brain did. Truly, in your mind, in my mind at least, I don't feel T'Challa is dead. There's a scene where Makima and the general of the Dora Milaje are mourning and talking about T'Challa, about how he was everything to them, and it makes no sense. It rings completely hollow because we didn't see all that, right? It feels like they're talking about Chadwick Boseman, but using T'Challa's name. They're mourning Chadwick Boseman on screen, but they're using T'Challa's name, who isn't dead, who didn't die. We didn't see him die. We didn't experience him die, right? So there's quite a bit of dissonance throughout the movie, and that's just one example. I want to make some things clear so it doesn't seem that I'm bending the movie story to fit my opinion in the point I'm trying to get across. The narrative reasons in universe in Wakanda Forever, the narrative development from T'Challa's death of the disease is that Wakanda is now vulnerable. This is the new dramatic conflict, the dramatic fruit that is born from the in-universe narrative death of T'Challa. Right? The country is now vulnerable. It's obvious. Action reaction. The king is dead. The country is now vulnerable. How is this dramatized in Wakanda Forever? I'm going to tell you how it is, and I'm going to tell you how it should have been dramatized, or how anything like that should be dramatized. It's dramatized by the Queen Mother, Angela Bassett, going to the UN and saying, "The king is dead, we're vulnerable, and it's our turn now." So, the narrative fruit that stemmed from the death of T'Challa, is that the country is now vulnerable. And how is that dramatized? How is that depicted? By the Queen Mother going to the UN and saying, our king is dead. We are, but it's our turn now. You think we're vulnerable? It's our turn now. So basically, what I'm saying is, the story is trying to force you to believe Wakanda is vulnerable. Wakanda is in danger of being invaded because there's no Black Panther. That, which makes no sense when you think about it. Let's ignore what the movie's trying to force us to believe, because Wakanda is so highly technological, no country would be able to step up to it. So what they should have done, if that's the case, if that's the new narrative thrust, which should have been more genuine and more of a story to come out of the death of T'Challa from a mysterious disease, is that, okay, Wakanda is now vulnerable. How do you show Wakanda is vulnerable? By showing Wakanda being invaded. Not saying Wakanda is vulnerable, then things transpire that leads to Wakanda being invaded. You dramatize a country's vulnerability by showing them being invaded. we're supposed to believe Wakanda is vulnerable, but they can't follow through with that idea because Wakanda cannot be vulnerable. They're absolutely formidable, if not the most formidable country on the planet. So it rings hollow. But they're trying to force us to believe Wakanda is vulnerable, so there's a need created for a new Black Panther to lead them. Wakanda is vulnerable without the Black Panther. You create a need to so that to drive the story so there's conflict and then that need is fulfilled, right? But it rings hollow because what does that mean? Like the Black Panther isn't the one that fights Wakanda's wars. Its soldiers does. Its technology does. The king, yes, is a representative, but and you do need a king. But it's hard to believe it is vulnerable without a Black Panther. So it feels contrived. It feels forced. That's why that story point of Wakanda being vulnerable isn't followed through. Even at the very end, it is hinted, insinuated that the king of the Jabari tribe, the big guy, the Winston guy, whatever, he's the one who shows up at the end of the movie to try out as ruler for Wakanda, ruler of Wakanda, right? So it's insinuated that he's going to be the new king of Wakanda, not Shuri, which further reinforces the point that Wakanda was never really vulnerable, and more importantly, Wakanda never needed a Black Panther, you know, as king. An idea for what they could have done was, you know, keep Black Panther in the beginning of the movie, keep T'Challa alive, and he's in a Black Panther costume, and he gets killed by Namor in the beginning of the movie, right? We don't see his face. He gets killed in the suit. At least we can experience that, and maybe Shuri is there, and that they can totally CG his face. If they do the mask coming off and it's his face. They've done it with, Carrie Fisher in Star Wars. They do it all the time. But and that would have given us at least some sort of helped us empathize with the character, put us in his shoes. We would have experienced the situation, so we can empathize with the characters whose actions are now defined by that situation. But from what we got is characters reacting to something that objectively never happened. It happened in real life. It didn't happen in real life. Chadwick Boseman died in real life, but Chadwick Boseman is not Black Panther. He played Black Panther. So this movie, everybody's reacting to something that didn't happen. It's just weird. It's really weird, and it feels more like that because we didn't see T'Challa die. We didn't see T'Challa die. And then what we got was reactionary to that. They're basically trying to create a reason for there to be drama in the story, trying to create conflict, but it all rings hollow because it's all in service of giving Shuri motivation to become Black Panther, which is a little too late because Shuri is not the main character from the beginning of the movie. Angela Bassett is, the Queen Mother is. So all these problems stem from that decision not to recast T'Challa. I would have really loved to have seen what they would have done, what movie we could have gotten instead of this if they went with recasting T'Challa. I'm sure you noticed by now I haven't talked about the villain. A movie is only as good as its villain, and that's because Namor is a non-villain, really, because by the end of the movie they're all friends. Wakanda and Atlantis, they're all cool now, right? Which takes away impact from the conflict. But yeah, I didn't talk about Namor because he's not really that much of a threat. He doesn't feel like a threat, even though he invades Wakanda, even though he's killing Wakandans, and some of his people are getting killed. It just doesn't feel like he's a tangible threat, and that sentiment is reinforced by the end of the movie, where Shuri and Namor become friends. Now, going forward is especially bleak because clearly Phase 4, after this is the cap of Phase 4, I believe. Clearly, Phase 4 um, is garbage. It's garbage. The characters they've created in it, nobody cares. Well, I don't care. Most people I know don't care. They sucked in the comic books. I'm talking about Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel. She Hulk was horrible. I don't think that character has any goodwill. So no one is rooting for or looking forward to seeing her in the crossover movies, Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. Like I'm not looking forward to seeing She-Hulk. I don't care about that. That's not why I'm looking forward to that movie. I'm not looking forward to seeing Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel. I'm not looking forward to seeing Sam Wilson, Captain America. I'm not looking forward to seeing Bucky. He's more interesting than Sam, I find. I'm not interested in seeing Doctor Strange because his movie sucked. Thor is a joke. You know, the only interesting thing left right now is the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, and they only usually just play a small part in the crossover movies. So it's looking pretty bleak from my perspective, but I'm sure for the normies and the stands, it's going to be fine. Like Marvel's going to be banking it, making bank for a long time. But I think they're going to notice a considerable loss, a considerable decline in the profits, but nothing, I guess, to make them stop or consider making quality work. But because people are seeing this, like this is clear as day. A lot of people know Wakanda Forever is not good. It's not good. A lot of people reviews I've watched are comparing it to the Eternals. People are saying it's worse than Thor: Love and Thunder, right? And I would say it's just as um, it lacks it's just as bad as those movies, or it's just as meaningless as those movies, even though it might be better, slightly. I think I'll put it on par with Thor: Love and Thunder. They're bad in different ways. This is just meaningless and forced and contrived and scattered, and it doesn't fulfill its promise. I didn't feel like I saw a Black Panther movie, right? So it's just, I'm not looking forward to what's coming in the MCU, and because the characters that are carrying it right now are not cool. I do not think Shuri works as the Black Panther. I don't think she can carry the mantle. Um, and so going forward, like she's our new Black Panther. Like these are the new Avengers. You know, who's interesting there? None of them are interesting. I've got to remember this feeling because I got it when I first saw the trailer for Wakanda Forever. I knew something was off. I knew this movie was going to be shitty somehow, but I wasn't sure. But after watching it, it was clear, even back then when I first saw the trailer, that this was not going to be a movie. The problem with the trailer was, the beef I had with it was that I could see there was no story there. There was no movie there. That's what I could see when the first trailer dropped. And now, of course, I can articulate it better because I've seen it. But yeah, there's no story. There's no story because of what we talked about. It was forced. T'Challa then died. Chadwick Boseman died. And forcing the issue created this abomination, this thing that is and it's not really a movie. It looks like a movie, but it's not a movie. There's no main character, and there's no real villain. And the villain's role is cheapened because he's only there to give motivation to the character in the third act. You could argue, yeah, the villain is there to always motivate the main guy, but this felt so ham-fisted when you realize, like, he was there to kill the queen mother so Shuri could become Black Panther, which is why Shuri was a non-character throughout the movie up until then. Something that's also interesting about this situation is that, given all these talk we get about, oh, black people don't get enough opportunities, or, women don't get enough opportunities in Hollywood. We need more black actors. We need more black movies. We need more gay movies. We need more whatever, more representation. This was the perfect opportunity to recast a black actor, a male, to fulfill the role of T'Challa, just like any other ongoing franchise like James Bond or Batman. This was an opportunity to give another black man a job. But instead, they went with this, which is ingenious on Disney's part, by the way, because this movie is just one big sentiment. It's not a movie; it's a big sentiment. You know, what Disney has done is they've ensured this is going to be a blockbuster by playing on that. They're ensuring they're going to have asses in seats because of the sentimentality of the audience. That's the genius of Black Panther. It's there's nothing this movie offers nothing. There's nothing in this movie that's fulfilling. I am about to sound like an insensitive douchebag. This movie ends with Shuri going to the beach, I guess maybe with T'Challa's remains. I don't know what it is. It's a moment to reflect on T'Challa, which is also a moment for us to reflect on T'Challa. But what's really happening is we're reflecting and mourning Chadwick Boseman. You know, she's sitting by the beach in Haiti, and looking out into the water and seeing there very somber, crying, and flashbacks of T'Challa. Chadwick Boseman is T'Challa. And I gotta tell you, Chadwick Boseman's death, the way I feel about it, is the way I would feel about any stranger's death. Meaning, I would feel the adequate amount of human empathy. I would think about my own mortality before I get on with my life. I didn't know Chadwick Boseman, and I wasn't friends with him like Shuri or that actress is. You know where all that the crying and the real emotion, all that stuff is coming from her friendship. But I didn't know Chadwick, and neither did everybody watching the movie. So I am not. I didn't vibe with anything that was going on in that scene because, more importantly, because in my opinion, James Bond didn't die. Batman didn't die. Black Panther did not die. Wasn't dead. Dead. We didn't see him die. So this rings so hollow. This whole movie rings so hollow and is just preying on cheap sentiment. Because yeah, it's just preying on cheap sentiment because I did not know Chadwick Boseman. You know, so the scene where she's crying and thinking back about Chadwick, I'm not there with her. It doesn't resonate with me. Am I supposed to feel bad, like really bad, feel the same weight of sadness she's feeling because Chadwick Boseman, not because it was a great human being, but because Chadwick Boseman played Black Panther? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I supposed to be sad because of what he did to, he made $1 billion for Disney? Oh, he's going to be so remembered by Marvel. Of course, he's going to be so remembered by Marvel. He made you guys a $1 billion, you know. But on a personal note, which is what this movie is. This movie is trying to prey on personal sentiments, what people might personally feel towards the notions of death and towards a beloved actor. That's all this movie has to offer, and it's all hollow and disingenuous, you know, because I'm not like the movie literally ends with Shuri crying over Chadwick Boseman by the water. Heed my words, Chadwick Boseman, not T'Challa. Chadwick Boseman. And I didn't know Chadwick Boseman like Shuri did. You know, I know Chadwick Boseman from his movies, and it shouldn't be important because we're talking about the MCU, that universe. We're talking about Black Panther. So really, I really couldn't get with all the mourning and all that stuff. Yes, I felt bad when Chadwick Boseman died, just like everybody else did. And even though people might act as though they really feel it, no, you can only feel so much because he's a stranger. You didn't really know him, and if all your sadness is coming from the fact that you love somebody who played your favorite character, or because you love the MCU so much, you got a problem. Like where that defines, it's like a family member died because Black Panther actor died, then I think you have a problem. But ultimately, as I said before, yeah, I wasn't friends with Chadwick Boseman. You know, Rest in peace. I have the same sentiments everybody does. But that shouldn't have anything to do with the movie. And the movie makes that sentiment an integral part of it. It is everything in this movie, the death of Chadwick Boseman. But that really has nothing to do with the MCU whatsoever. So it's all misguided up until the very end. Up until the very end. So now I'm going to tell you how I really feel about Wakanda Forever. Thank you for watching. If you managed to find this, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.